He took the RV, the savings, and left me drowning in debt with a goodbye email. But the real mistake he made was thinking I'd just break. I didn't scream. I didn't chase after him. I went silent. I got sick. I fell, but when I stood up, I had something more powerful than revenge. I had a plan, and a 10-year-old son who saw everything and refused to let his mom lose. This is the story of how we turned betrayal into justice, of how I stopped being the woman who was left and became the woman who took it all back. I never imagined that the happiest moment of my life would lead me straight into the worst nightmare I've ever faced. Looking back, I wonder how I didn't see it coming. Maybe love blinds you, or perhaps it's easier to believe a comforting lie than accept a painful truth. My name is Natalie Hayes, and I'm 35 years old. I thought I had my life figured out, a stable job as an accountant in Seattle, a small cozy home, and a family I adored. Marcus, my husband, had finally landed a decent job after years of unemployment, and our 10-year-old son Finn was blossoming into an incredibly bright young boy, his intelligence often surpassing adults twice his age. Life felt complete. Marcus had recently gotten a job at an advertising firm downtown. After years of instability, bouncing from one gig to another, this seemed like the turning point we desperately needed. Marcus began waking up early, dressing neatly, and bringing home a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. I remember clearly how he came home one evening, smiling brightly, and wrapped me in his arms, spinning me around the kitchen like we were teenagers again. "We deserve a fresh start," he had whispered into my hair, his voice filled with warmth and hope. "Let's finally do something special, something unforgettable." I was hesitant at first. After all, our finances had always been shaky, and caution had become second nature. But Marcus was persuasive. He painted beautiful images of weekend getaways, traveling across states, camping under stars, Finn roasting marshmallows by the fire, his laughter echoing into the night. And so I let my guard down. Marcus had found a beautiful RV listed online, spacious enough to accommodate our small family, yet compact enough to be manageable. Its price was steep $42,000, but Marcus reassured me we could handle the monthly payments. When his credit history came back insufficient, he pleaded with me to co-sign. After all, my credit was excellent, and the bank wouldn't hesitate to grant us the loan. "It's just paperwork," he promised, his blue eyes steady on mine. "Trust me, Natalie," I signed. How could I not? Marcus had finally stepped up, finally become the husband and father Finn and I always needed. We celebrated with pizza and ice cream that night, planning our first adventure. Finn sat cross-legged on the living room floor, meticulously drawing out routes and marking landmarks on a map he'd printed from the computer. "Mom, we'll see Yellowstone, right? I want to see the geysers." Finn's eyes sparkled with excitement, and I felt my heart swell. "Of course, honey," I replied, gently ruffling his hair, utterly unaware that my entire world was about to come crashing down around me. The night before our RV was supposed to be delivered, I felt a strange sense of unease. Sleep eluded me, and the house felt oddly quiet. Marcus had been on edge lately, his phone constantly vibrating, his eyes darting nervously each time it did. But I brushed it off as work stress. After all, we were finally stable. Things were finally good. How naive I was. The next morning, as I sat at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, an email notification popped onto my screen. I clicked it absent-mindedly, expecting it to be another routine work message. But as I read the words, my heart froze. The air grew thick, making it impossible to breathe. "Natalie, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've fallen for someone else, and we've decided to start fresh together. I've taken the RV and our savings. I'm sorry, but I need this. Don't look for me." My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. Instinctively, I grabbed my phone and dialed Marcus, desperately hoping it was some cruel joke. But the call went straight to voicemail. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real. I raced home, barely noticing the traffic lights or pedestrians crossing. My chest was tight, panic gripping me as I burst through the front door. Finn was at school, thankfully unaware of the disaster unfolding. I opened our shared drawer where we kept important documents, only to find the divorce papers we'd once argued over, signed and gone. My knees buckled beneath me, and I slid down to the cold hardwood floor, hugging my knees tightly as my tears turned to uncontrollable sobs. How could Marcus do this? How could he abandon us? leave us drowning in debt and lies. I don't remember how long I sat there, frozen in disbelief, until Finn's gentle voice snapped me back to reality. Mom, what's wrong? Finn stood in the doorway, his backpack still on his shoulders, eyes wide with concern. Nothing, sweetheart, I lied weakly, forcing a smile. I'm just tired. He tilted his head, studying me carefully. Finn always noticed things others missed. Mom, he said quietly, stepping closer. You're looking up and to the right. You always do that when you're lying. His words cut deep, exposing my fragile facade. I could no longer shield him from the painful truth. You're right, I admitted softly. Something bad happened. Finn sat beside me on the floor, placing his small hand reassuringly on mine. It's Dad, isn't it? He left us. How did you know? I asked, startled by his maturity. He sighed gently, eyes reflecting sadness beyond his years. I've seen the way he acts lately. Adults think kids don't notice things, but we do. I wrapped my arms around Finn tightly, drawing strength from his quiet resilience. I'm so sorry, I whispered, guilt flooding me. I failed us. Finn hugged me back fiercely, his voice steady and sure. No, Mom, you didn't fail. He did, and we won't let him break us. That moment, on the cold hardwood floor of our tiny Seattle home, my 10-year-old son taught me something profound. Even in darkness, there was a way forward. I didn't know it yet, but Finn had already begun crafting a plan that would not only reclaim our lives, but show Marcus that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the people you least expect. And so we rose from the floor together, mother and son, ready to face whatever storm awaited us, unaware that the journey we were about to embark upon would change us forever. It's strange how clearly we see things once they're behind us. Looking back now, every red flag seems painfully obvious, but back then, hope clouded my judgment. Marcus was smiling again, laughing freely as he had in our early days, and I couldn't bear to extinguish the light finally returning to his eyes. Yet beneath the happiness lay a reality I refused to see clearly. Our finances were still a delicate house of cards, fragile and easily toppled. After Marcus first showed me the listing for the RV, I remember staying awake that night, watching shadows dance across the ceiling, anxiety gnawing relentlessly at my chest. $42,000 was an enormous sum, especially on our income, even with my stable accounting job. Marcus's new position at the ad agency might have been promising, but it was hardly secure. I'd seen him start strong before, only to watch his enthusiasm dwindle and fade away into unemployment again. The cycle exhausted me, but Marcus seemed convinced this time was different. We've struggled long enough, he'd whispered convincingly, brushing my hair back gently. Don't you think we deserve something to finally celebrate? I'd searched his eyes for doubt, dishonesty, or even fear, but saw only warmth, sincerity, and a determination I hadn't glimpsed in years. Marcus always had a talent for persuasion. It was part of why I'd fallen for him in the first place. He was a dreamer, someone who could effortlessly paint visions of beautiful futures. Unfortunately, reality often lagged far behind. Yet despite my instincts, I found myself meeting with the loan officer 2 days later. The woman behind the polished oak desk examined our paperwork meticulously, pausing to glance at Marcus. I'd held my breath, silently praying for approval, while Marcus shifted nervously, fingers tapping his knees. She shook her head slightly. I'm sorry, but Mr. Hayes, your credit history alone isn't sufficient. The bank requires additional security to approve this loan. Marcus's shoulders slumped visibly, disappointment shadowing his face. My heart tightened with empathy. I knew rejection cut Marcus deeply. It always had. The thought of witnessing him retreat into self-doubt again was unbearable. Without fully realizing the gravity of my actions, I spoke up impulsively. What if I were to co-sign? My credit score is good. Would that make a difference? The loan officer hesitated momentarily, reviewing our combined incomes. Her eyes softened. Actually, Mrs. Hayes, if you were the primary signer and Mr. Hayes the co-signer, it would significantly increase your chances. Your financial profile is strong enough to guarantee the loan. Marcus turned sharply, eyes wide, hopeful again. Natalie, you don't have to do this. But the desperation behind his eyes spoke louder than his words. I squeezed his hand gently. I trust you. If this means finally giving our family some happiness, let's do it. As we signed the final documents, a sense of unease briefly flickered across my heart, like lightning illuminating a distant storm. But Marcus's smile was radiant, blinding me to the risks lurking beneath the surface. Finn seemed to notice my anxiety. One evening, as I washed dishes, he quietly approached, tugging softly on my sleeve. "Mom, are we really okay?" His voice was steady, mature beyond his years. I knelt beside him, smoothing his hair gently. "What makes you ask?" He hesitated, looking down at his feet. "I heard you on the phone with the bank yesterday. You sounded worried." My heart twisted painfully. Finn deserved honesty, but how could I burden a 10-year-old child with adult fears? I chose my words carefully. "Sometimes adults have to make big choices that are a bit scary. But your dad and I believe this RV will make us happy. Happiness is worth taking a chance on, right?" He studied me thoughtfully, his blue eyes serious. "I suppose. But you'll tell me if things go wrong?" I forced a reassuring smile. "Of course, honey. Always." Finn smiled back softly, seemingly satisfied, but the innocence in his eyes made me realize the enormous weight of responsibility on my shoulders. I'd placed our entire family's stability on a gamble, and now there was no turning back. In the weeks leading up to the RV delivery, Marcus's behavior shifted subtly. At first, I dismissed his frequent late nights at the office, constant texts, and hushed phone conversations as normal job stress. Marcus claimed important client deadlines, assuring me he was building our future. I convinced myself the nagging discomfort I felt was simply paranoia, a lingering anxiety from years of instability. Yet despite my efforts, small suspicions persisted. One evening, as Marcus showered, I noticed his phone lying face down, buzzing quietly against the countertop. Curiosity nagged me, but trust held me back. I glanced away, determined to believe everything was fine. After all, what marriage survives without trust? As the delivery date approached, Marcus grew noticeably tense, becoming impatient whenever I asked about the upcoming trip. He avoided eye contact, his laughter less frequent, his affection mechanical and forced. Every instinct screamed something was wrong, yet I suppressed my intuition, choosing instead to cling stubbornly to hope. The night before our RV was scheduled to arrive, Marcus returned home later than ever, tired but strangely restless. He barely touched dinner, excusing himself early to bed. I followed shortly after, trying desperately to quiet the fear gnawing at the edges of my mind. Lying beside him, listening to his uneven breathing, I whispered softly into the darkness, hoping for reassurance. "Marcus, are you okay?" He hesitated for an eternity before responding, his voice strangely distant. "Yeah, just thinking about tomorrow." His answer was vague, unsettling rather than comforting. But exhaustion overtook me, silencing my doubts for the moment. When morning arrived, Marcus was gone early, leaving behind only a brief note. "Gone to work early. See you tonight." I believed him, or at least I wanted to. Sitting at my desk later that morning, my coffee already cold and forgotten, the email that shattered everything appeared without warning. Marcus's betrayal ripped open every buried fear, every ignored red flag flooding back in agonizing clarity. I'd gambled and lost everything, my family, my trust, and my stability swept away in an instant. In those harrowing moments, one thought consumed me. How could I have been so blind? But even amidst the pain, I knew I couldn't afford to crumble not when Finn needed me most. And beneath the devastation and confusion, something new and powerful stirred, a fierce, protective anger I'd never known I possessed. Marcus had underestimated me. He'd mistaken my trust and kindness for weakness. That would prove to be his greatest mistake. There are moments in life when everything, time, sound, even breath, just stops. For me, that moment came in the form of an email, so sterile in format, yet so brutal in its message. "Natalie, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've fallen in love with someone else. Her name is Celeste, and I've decided to start over with her. I've taken the RV since it's already in your name, and I've transferred what was left in our savings. You'll be fine, you always are. Please don't try to contact me." The room spun as I stared at the words, trying to comprehend the sudden fracture of my world. I could barely breathe. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the precision of it. The cold, calculated way Marcus had timed it. The RV hadn't even been driven off the lot yet. The loan payments hadn't started. And he'd taken everything: the vehicle, the $25,000 in savings we'd built painstakingly over the years, And worst of all, my trust. I called him instantly, hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Straight to voicemail, again and again. A numb kind of rage started to creep in. I wasn't just shocked, I was paralyzed. I rushed home, hoping ridiculously that maybe it wasn't true. Maybe he was there. Maybe there was still some logical explanation for the insanity I had just read. The front door was locked, silent. Inside, his shoes were gone, his laptop, his overnight bag. I raced to the small drawer in our bedroom, where we'd once kept a copy of the divorce papers we'd filled out during a rough patch years ago, half jokingly. The folder was empty. The realization hit like a physical blow. He'd planned this. He waited until the loan was finalized. Waited until the RV was in my name. Waited until every cent in our joint account could be drained, then disappeared. I collapsed on the edge of our bed, hands pressed to my temples, trying to stop the room from spinning. There was no anger in that moment, not even sadness, just a deep, gut-level humiliation. How could I have let this happen? How had I ignored every red flag? My instincts had screamed, and I had silenced them with hope. The sound of a door clicking open snapped me back to reality. It was Finn. He stepped inside, dropping his backpack with a soft thud. "Hi, Mom. You okay?" I swallowed hard, wiped my face, and turned to him with what I hoped was a neutral expression. "I'm fine, honey, just a little tired." He didn't buy it. Of course he didn't. "You're lying again," he said softly. "What makes you say that?" "You're looking up and to the right. You always do when you lie." His voice wasn't accusing, just observant, sharp, like always. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. My lips trembled. I closed my eyes and exhaled shakily. "Something happened with Dad," he said quietly, stepping closer. I nodded, unable to pretend anymore. "He's gone, sweetheart." "Gone where?" My voice broke. "With another woman. He left us." Finn was quiet, too quiet. I braced for tears or a breakdown, but it never came. He simply sat next to me on the bed, hands folded in his lap. "I kind of figured," he whispered. "I heard him talking to someone late at night last week. He sounded different, not like Dad." His words hit me harder than any outburst could have. This boy my son had known, or at least suspected. And yet he hadn't said anything, maybe to protect me, maybe because he hoped he was wrong. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, wrapping my arms around him tightly. "It's not your fault, Mom." But I trusted him. I let this happen. Finn pulled back slightly and looked me dead in the eye. "No, you gave someone a chance. That's not a mistake. He made the choice to hurt us, not you." For a 10-year-old, his words carried the weight of someone far older. It was both comforting and heartbreaking. That night, after Finn had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my bank app. Balance, $38.90. The rest, gone. Withdrawn in one clean sweep by Marcus just before his disappearing act. I checked the auto loan portal. The first payment, $683, was due in 2 weeks. The RV, still brand new and untouched by me, was gone. I had no vehicle, no money, and now carried a $42,000 debt for something I no longer even possessed. A small tremor ran through me, then another. My fingers gripped the table. I thought I might scream, but I didn't. There was no one to hear me. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against the cold wood. All I could do was whisper, "What now?" The house felt heavier than ever before, thick with betrayal, shame, and uncertainty. But in the room next to mine, my son was sleeping, unaware that the weight of our future had just been dropped squarely on my shoulders. And somehow, I knew this wouldn't break me, not yet. I didn't know how, but I would find a way. Not just to survive, but to take back what was mine. Because Marcus didn't leave behind a broken woman. He left behind a mother, and that would be his first mistake. I thought I could hold it together. I told myself I was strong, that I just needed a few days to process, to figure things out, to make a plan. But grief doesn't work on a schedule. Betrayal doesn't care if you have a child to feed or a job to maintain. It started with headaches, then nausea. I stopped eating, barely slept. Every morning, I woke up and moved through the house like a ghost, pretending for Finn's sake. I made his lunch, walked him to the bus, even forced myself to sit at my desk and answer work emails. But inside, something was unraveling, quietly, steadily, completely. I remember the morning it all gave out. It was a Thursday. There was a mandatory training session at the firm. I showed up, hair pulled back in a loose bun, oversized cardigan hanging on my shrinking frame. I hadn't looked in a mirror in days, and frankly, I didn't care to. I took a seat in the back of the conference room, trying to hide the fact that my hands were shaking. The presenter's voice faded into background noise as my vision began to blur. I blinked rapidly, willing the world to stay still. But it didn't. The room tilted slightly, then sharply, the air thinned. "I just need some water," I whispered to no one in particular, and stood up. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor. Voices muffled and panicked buzzed around me like a distant radio. Someone called my name. I couldn't respond. My chest was tight, my limbs were heavy, then darkness. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling was white, sterile, unfamiliar. The beeping beside me was rhythmic, oddly comforting. An IV line ran down my arm. A hospital bracelet clung to my wrist like a tag I didn't remember receiving. A nurse noticed me stirring and called in the doctor. He was kind-eyed, probably late 50s. He spoke in calm, measured tones. "You experienced a vasovagal episode, Mrs. Hayes, likely triggered by extreme physical and emotional stress. We've run some tests, and we need to keep you a few more days for further monitoring." I nodded slowly, but didn't say much. I didn't have the energy to explain. How do you summarize the collapse of your entire life in a sentence or two? But I didn't have to, because just then the door burst open. "Mom!" Finn stood there, chest heaving, eyes red, his school backpack still slung across his small shoulders. His voice trembled as he rushed to the bedside. "Are you okay? Are you dying?" I blinked back sudden tears. "No, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." He let out a breath so shaky it broke my heart. I was so scared. The school said you went to the hospital. I didn't know what to do. I ran all the way here. I reached out and pulled him close. "I'm okay, baby. I promise. Just tired. My body gave me a warning, that's all." He pulled back, eyes scanning my face. "Because of Dad?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, because of Dad. He sat down beside the bed, still gripping my hand. "You don't have to be strong all the time, you know." I smiled weakly. "Who told you I was strong in the first place?" "You did," he said simply. "Every time you didn't cry in front of me. Every time you smiled even when you didn't want to. That's what strong people do." I couldn't hold the tears in any longer. They fell silently as Finn squeezed my hand tighter. "I'll help now," he added. "I'm not little anymore. I can do things too." Barnthad. I wanted to protest. Tell him he was still a child, that it wasn't his responsibility to fix what Marcus had broken. But I knew better. I saw it in his eyes. Finn had already stepped into a space no child should ever have to, and I couldn't push him out of it. So I nodded. "Okay, we'll help each other." That night, as I lay in the hospital bed, IV slowly dripping into my arm, I stared up at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "This will not be the end of me." I was tired. I was heartbroken. But I was not done. Marcus thought he could ruin me. He didn't realize that you can't destroy a woman who's already lost everything. You can only force her to rebuild stronger, smarter, and this time, unbreakable. And I had a partner now, a 10-year-old with a mind like a blade. He just didn't know yet that he was about to become the most important part of the plan. After I was discharged from the hospital, the world felt different like. I'd stepped out of a storm into the eerie stillness that follows. My body was weak, but something inside me had crystallized. There was no more room for illusions, no more time to wallow. Marcus had left me with nothing but debt, betrayal, and a child watching my every move. And that child, he wasn't just watching anymore. He was thinking, planning. The first evening back home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through medical bills, loan notices, and a stack of unopened mail that felt heavier than it looked. My hands trembled slightly with each envelope. My savings were gone. My paycheck wouldn't even cover the loan's first installment, let alone groceries or the electricity bill. I didn't have the strength to cry anymore. I just sat there still. That's when Finn walked in, holding something in his hands. "Mom," he said, sliding into the chair across from me, "I have an idea." I blinked. "Sweetheart, I really can't think right now. Can it wait?" "No," he said firmly, but gently. "This is important. I know where Dad is." My heart stopped. What? Finn lifted a small, slightly worn smartphone, the kid model we had gotten him after he got lost during a hike the previous year. I remembered the panic back then, the endless searching until we found him. After that, Marcus insisted we install a GPS tracker on it, one that synced with both of our phones. Except, Marcus had forgotten something. He had never removed the parental controls I had set up, ones that included real-time location access. I've been checking every night, Finn continued, opening the app. He's been moving around, but today he stopped. He's here. He zoomed in on the map. Mount Rainier National Park. He's camping. I stared at the screen, stunned. You've been tracking him this whole time? He shrugged. You were sick. Someone had to make sure he didn't disappear forever. I was speechless, not just from what he had done, but how calmly he said it, like he'd been holding it all together while I broke down. I also found something else, he added, pulling out my laptop and opening a browser window. Look, there, displayed on a local classified ads site, was a listing for a brand new RV, priced a little below market value, marked as urgent sale cash only. The photos, taken at a forested campsite. The background matched the map location almost exactly. Seller name, M.H. Marcus Hayes. The bile rose in my throat. He's trying to sell it, Finn nodded solemnly. And you're still paying for it. The room went silent. The kind of silence that thickens the air, turns it heavy. Then something shifted inside me, like a match struck in the dark. No, I said quietly. No, not anymore. I stood slowly, my body still sore, but my mind now fully awake. We're going to take it back. Finn's eyes widened. You mean call the police? Yes, I said, but not just that. We're going to make sure he can't twist out of this. We'll get everything in writing. We'll gather evidence. We're going to do this by the book, and I'm going to make damn sure it sticks. Finn's face lit up. Okay, then I'll help you make a list. Together we spread everything across the table: loan documents, proof of ownership, transaction history, showing the funds withdrawn by Marcus, and screenshots of the ad. Finn took careful notes, his handwriting neat and precise. He even suggested we record everything when we met Marcus, just in case. Mom, he said, eyes gleaming with quiet confidence. You've always been the strong one, but maybe now it's my turn. Mate. I stared at him for a moment, this 10-year-old boy who had carried me through hell and still stood steady. I reached out and placed my hand over his. I think we both are now. That night, under the dim kitchen light, we finalized our plan. I emailed a friend of mine, an old college classmate who'd become a lawyer, and asked for guidance on filing a theft report and documenting a civil claim. I also asked if using location data from a child's phone would hold up in a civil case. He confirmed, absolutely, as long as I was the legal guardian. I was. Marcus had stolen from me. He had lied, manipulated, and abandoned his family. But he made one crucial mistake. He underestimated the power of a mother, and he had no idea who our son was growing up to be. The next morning, Finn looked up from his bowl of cereal and asked, "Are we really going to do this?" I smiled. "Yes, we're going to take back what's ours." He grinned. "Then can I be the one who talks first?" My smile grew wider. "You'll get your chance, because this wasn't just about the RV anymore. This was about reclaiming our dignity, our peace, our lives. And we were coming for all of it together." 3 days later, under a gray and heavy sky, I found myself standing on the edge of a gravel parking lot at Mount Rainier National Park. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and damp soil, and somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker tapped out a steady rhythm that almost matched the pounding in my chest. The GPS had led us here with unnerving precision. Finn sat beside me in the car, his eyes fixed on the glowing dot on the screen that marked Marcus's exact location. Just a few hundred yards ahead, our stolen RV. "I still don't understand how he forgot about the GPS," I muttered, more to myself than to Finn. "He didn't forget," Finn said, voice low. "He never knew you turned on tracking. He thought he was the only one watching me." I glanced at him. "That's terrifyingly clever." Finn gave a tight smile. "I learned from the best." I parked a safe distance away, pulling out the folder of printed evidence we'd prepared. Proof of loan ownership, bank statements, screenshots of the ad Marcus had posted, and the police report I'd filed just 2 days earlier. We approached slowly, cautiously. The RV was parked in a clearing, half hidden by towering firs. Smoke drifted from a portable fire pit nearby. Marcus was hunched over the flames, roasting something on a stick. And beside him, lounging in a camp chair in leopard print leggings and a pink hoodie, was a woman with bleached blonde hair and a belly that visibly pushed against the fabric. Celeste. She spotted us first, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Marcus looked up and froze. "Natalie," he said, standing. "What are you? How did you—" He trailed off as his eyes landed on Finn. My son crossed his arms. "Hi, Dad." Marcus glanced around nervously. "You shouldn't be here." I held up the police file. "Actually, I have every right. That's my RV you're sitting next to. Registered under my name. Still unpaid, by the way." He raised his hands, defensive. Okay, let's not make a scene. Why don't we just talk?" Celeste rolled her eyes, not even trying to hide her disdain. "This is the crazy wife you told me about?" I ignored her. "We're not here to talk," I said. "We're here to take back what's ours." Finn pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app, tapping the screen slowly, deliberately. Marcus noticed. "Wait, what is that?" "A record," Finn said calmly, "of everything you say from this point forward. For the lawyers, and maybe the police." Celeste scoffed. "Are you threatening us? That's illegal." "No," I said. "Taking a vehicle registered under someone else's name and trying to sell it is what's illegal." Marcus looked like a cornered animal, darting his gaze from me to Finn to the RV. "Natalie, please look," I panicked. Things got complicated. "With Celeste?" I asked, glancing at her belly. "How far along are you?" She smirked. "Almost 7 months." I stared at her. "That's interesting. You two met how long ago? 3 months?" The smirk faded. Marcus turned slowly, blinking. "Wait, what?" I repeated. "You've only been together for 3 months, but she's 7 months pregnant." A deep silence settled. Celeste stiffened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think I do," I said coolly. "And I think Marcus just found out he's not the daddy." "You lied to me?" he hissed, stepping back. "Is this even my kid?" Celeste snapped. "You were an easy target, okay? You believed what you wanted to believe. Don't pin this on me." The argument ignited instantly accusations, curses, defensiveness, but I didn't interrupt. I let it all burn. Sometimes the fire has to consume everything before you can rebuild. Finn leaned in and whispered, "Now?" I nodded. He stepped forward. "Dad, I have a question." Marcus paused mid-shout. "What?" "Why did you leave us? Was it worth it?" Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. His face crumpled into something pathetic and small. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You did anyway." "Down." Marcus dropped his gaze. "You didn't just leave a marriage," Finn continued. "You left a kid, a family, and you didn't just break a promise. You stole." I panicked, okay? I lost control." "No," I said coldly. "You made a choice." I held out my hand. "Keys, now." For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he reached into his pocket and dropped the keys into my palm. They were warm, slick with sweat. I turned to Celeste. "And I suggest you find your own ride home." But she wasn't listening. Her phone was to her ear. "Mom, yeah, I need a ride. And maybe a place to stay." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word. I didn't feel sorry for her, but I didn't feel rage anymore either. Just pity. We started walking back toward the car. The keys jingled in my hand, each chime like a tiny victory. As we reached the edge of the trees, Finn turned and looked back. "Do you think he ever loved us?" I paused. "Maybe, but not enough." Finn nodded. "That's what I thought." We kept walking. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like power humming just beneath my skin. Marcus had tried to erase us, but we'd just written the first chapter of our comeback. We returned home in silence, not the kind born of awkwardness, but something more sacred. It was the silence of completion of reclaiming. The keys to the RV sat on the passenger seat between us like a badge of honor. Finn stared out the window, arms folded, chin tilted up ever so slightly. I'd never seen him look older or prouder. The next morning, I called Officer Lindstrom, the local deputy, who had helped me file the initial theft report. I told him what happened at the park, provided the recordings, the photos, and the ad Marcus had posted online. The evidence spoke louder than any emotion ever could. "Sounds like your husband didn't just walk out on a marriage," Lindstrom said. "He committed grand theft and attempted fraud. And from what I'm seeing here, it's all under your name, meaning he never had legal access to any of it." "Exactly," I replied. "And he tried to sell it." There was a pause. "We'll take it from here." The next 48 hours moved fast. Marcus was contacted by police and told he was under investigation for attempted fraudulent sale of personal property, misappropriation of joint funds, and willful abandonment. I was advised not to contact him directly, which was fine. I had no desire to speak to him anymore. I had already said everything I needed to with action. Through my lawyer, I filed a civil complaint for damages. The $25,000 Marcus had taken from our account, plus the mental and physical distress caused by his abandonment supported by hospital records. I requested $30,000 in damages and full financial responsibility for the RV loan. In addition, I demanded child support for Finn. I received Marcus's response through his lawyer. He was willing to settle to avoid formal charges and potential jail time. He agreed to return all remaining funds from the account, pay a monthly child support amount of $500, and submit to a garnished wage arrangement. His new job, ironically, was still active, and my attorney ensured his employer would deduct the agreed amount from every paycheck and deposit it directly into my account. It was clean, it was legal, it was binding. But what made it truly satisfying wasn't the money. It was that Marcus finally had to work for what he took for granted. I even contacted a subcontracting warehouse near his apartment, the kind of place that hired on short notice for physical labor. They were desperate for bodies. I handed over his name and availability, knowing full well he'd have no choice but to accept. Celeste had vanished from the picture almost immediately after the confrontation. From what I heard, her parents cut her off, and Marcus was left alone with a debt-shaped hole and a child who wasn't his. Whether the pregnancy was even real or just part of a larger manipulation, I never found out. And I didn't care. I sold the RV a week later. It wasn't easy. There were still outstanding payments, and the buyer negotiated hard. But once the sale cleared, I was able to pay off the loan completely. No more monthly bills. No more reminder of what he tried to do. When the final payment posted, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and stared at the cleared balance. $0, zero debt, zero ties. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not mocking, just relief. A full-body release. Then I turned toward the living room, where Finn sat working on his science project, and called out, "Hey buddy, we're free." He looked up, grinned. "Took us long enough," I smiled. "But we did it right." He nodded. "We did it our way." Yes, with proof. With persistence. With a quiet strength no one saw coming. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just built my case and let justice carry the final blow. 6 weeks after selling the RV and watching the loan vanish from my life, I woke up one morning and didn't feel dread. It was quiet. The kind of quiet I used to fear, but now I embraced. No angry footsteps in the hallway. No buzzing phone with texts I wasn't supposed to see. No pretending everything was okay for the sake of peace. Just me and Finn. Just our little home, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, and the smell of fresh toast in the kitchen. It felt like peace. But more than that, it felt like possibility. I started small. I returned to work part-time, on my own terms. My boss, who had seen me collapse in the office weeks earlier, welcomed me back with an understanding nod and a lighter workload. But something inside me had changed. I was done living quietly. For the first time in years, I began writing again. Not in a journal, not hidden in notebooks shoved in drawers, but publicly. I started a blog, just a modest space at first, titled Debtless and Undone. I told my story, piece by piece, about the betrayal, the legal battle, and the unexpected brilliance of a 10-year-old boy who refused to let his mother fall apart. I expected judgment, pity, maybe silence. What I got was overwhelming solidarity. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of women commented. Some whispered their own stories, abandonment, deception, financial ruin. Some simply wrote, "Thank you for making me feel less alone." I didn't realize it at first, but that space became more than healing. It became a mission. I began researching personal finance tools for single mothers. I posted templates for budgeting, guides for reclaiming financial independence after divorce, and tips on navigating legal processes for asset protection. Every lesson I learned the hard way, I passed on. And Finn, he became my unexpected business partner. He helped me with video editing, designed graphics, even suggested we add a kid's corner where he could share thoughts from a child's perspective. He titled his first post, "How to Be Brave When Your Dad Disappears." It went viral. The blog grew, slowly but steadily. Eventually, we were invited to speak at a small conference for women entrepreneurs. I took the stage, heart pounding, and looked out at a room full of women who were once me exhausted, uncertain, but still standing. I told them, being left doesn't mean you're broken. It means someone underestimated your strength. And that is their mistake, to carry not yours. They stood and applauded, and for the first time, I believed the words even as I spoke them. Finn, now 11, received a community award the following month for his digital literacy work, helping other kids whose parents were going through divorces. He stood on stage in a clip-on tie and said, "My mom taught me that you can be strong even when you feel small. That's what I try to be, a little strong." I cried the entire ceremony. As for Marcus, he paid month after month through garnished wages like clockwork. I never heard from him again, and I never tried to reach out. Some chapters need to stay closed. Some people don't deserve a sequel, but every time that child support hit my account, I smiled, not out of pettiness, but because it was proof that I'd fought back legally, intelligently, and righteously, and won. People often ask me now, how did you do it? How did you survive that kind of betrayal? And I always answer the same way. I didn't survive it, I rebuilt from it, stronger, smarter, and this time on my own terms.